Hello and welcome to my poll watch for August 2025. I'm recording this on the final day of July. I'm going to take a look at some of the opinion polls and some of the averages to see how British politics is shaping up, and try to think about how issues can affect polling. It's not always obvious, but we can try. We can have an experiment with that. What sort of issues have been going on over the last few weeks that might affect the polls? Well, the government might point to things like trade deals that they've been doing. They might point to Keir Starmer on the international stage, perhaps. But we've also had things like the U-turn on benefit legislation. We've had Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, in tears at PMQs. There's been a range of issues that might have affected government popularity. We've had a deal with France on migration as well, and small boats. All sorts of stuff might have played into the way the government has been performing. Let's take a look at the average graph for polls since the election last year. And as you can see, the Labour Party went down steadily up until about maybe May sort of time, and since then they've kind of been flatlining, going down a little bit but not a great deal. And we've seen, meanwhile, Reform have shot up, but they are now going down again, and I wonder why that is. I have a feeling that people are feeling slightly better about the situation to do with things like small boats and perhaps the economy at large. The economy always plays a big part in the way people say they will vote. And the way that these polls work is that the polling company will ask people how they intend to vote if there was an election tomorrow. This suggests that Reform are still going to do very well, but you can see they are declining. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are back on the up, and it kind of looks as though Reform's performance and the Conservatives' performance are linked, and that is not a total surprise. They are after very similar types of voter. The Labour Party has lost out to Reform, but they haven't lost as many voters to Reform than the Conservatives have, I don't believe. So we are seeing that three-way battle. I'm assuming that Reform might drop further. That might not be the end of them heading towards a bit of a slump. I do feel as though they are going to suffer in the long term, in the fact that they're really the Nigel Farage party. Nigel Farage recently was asked if he ever wanted to be Prime Minister in the future, and he kind of fluffed it. Fluffed the answer, and I wonder whether he does actually want the pressure of being responsible for things. It's so much easier to complain. It's so much easier to be at the sidelines saying everything's wrong and isn't it terrible, and influencing things that way. And you can see it can get an awful lot of support. It can even get you people in Parliament. But I'm not sure it's a strategy that lasts. Reform needs to be something else if it wants to take power, or if it does take power in the way that it is now, and presumably Farage gets into number 10 at some point, then I'm not sure what that really means, because it doesn't look like a party that could ever really handle power. Bear in mind they're in power in some local authorities in England, and they have a mayoralty as well. They're going to be judged on what they do in power, and there are reports across the country where they have councillors and where they have control of things not entirely working as well as they might want it to. Being in power isn't easy. It is much easier to just carp. So I think they've got a problem. Another thing that's happened in the last few weeks that doesn't feature on this graph is that Jeremy Corbyn's started a new party. And I think that will suffer the same sort of issue. Is it a new party with a range of people at the helm of it, or is it another mouthpiece for Jeremy Corbyn? He hasn't proven himself a competent runner of a political party, and I would argue that Farage hasn't either. Farage has proved himself a person who will lead parties and then leave them the moment things go tricky for him. So yeah, that's interesting. I also have this feeling that the Conservatives' best opportunity is the Labour government doing well. That sounds ironic, doesn't it? That sounds wrong, counterintuitive. But the theory is this. A lot of people left their support for the Conservatives and moved to Reform because they got disillusioned with the Conservatives. They got disillusioned with the fact that public services are in a mess in this country. If people start feeling better about the country, feeling better about their communities, feeling better generally about the direction that the UK is going in, maybe the economy improves, then Labour will become more popular and there will be fewer reasons for people to resort to heading towards Reform. Ultimately, voters are clever and they will realise that, or most of them will realise that Reform don't really have a chance of defeating the two-party system. The Conservatives will, at some point, be back in power. I think most people will head in that direction and the two-party system will carry on unabated. But I might be wrong, and I often am. It's just a theory. I think as Labour does well, if they do well, they will go up in the polls, so will the Conservatives, and Reform won't be featuring quite so heavily. I hope that makes sense. In a month's time, we'll see if that picture has changed any. I think it will change in some ways, but of course we are now entering the month where normally the least happens. The politicians are on holiday. Parliament isn't sitting. When I was a civil servant, not only did the ministers all go on holiday in August, but most of the senior managers did too, because they're there to make sure that they're doing the job for the ministers. So the whole of government kind of, in a way, it shuts down. It is people going about their business on a daily basis in the civil service just to keep government ticking over. You don't normally get major things happening. However, international affairs can carry on, and of course we've got problems at hotels where protesters are coming to protest about migrants being held in hotels. We don't know if that is going to kick off again like things did last year. So anything can happen to alter the picture. But that's the current averages as we see them. You'll see that the Greens are still doing just under 10%, and they've been steadily rising since the last election. The Liberal Democrats peaked at 15, I think, and now a little bit less than that. Let's take a look at some raw figures from each poll. These are the latest results per pollster. Many of them do more than one poll a month, but these are the latest ones from each of them. Find Out Now is very interesting because nearly always they are suggesting that Reform are having a big lead over Labour. Nearly all of their polls have a much larger lead than some of the others, which makes me think that they're either onto something or they're totally wrong. But they might be exaggerating things, or they might be bang on the money. It's difficult to tell. And this is one of the problems with these polling companies. They're not all coming up with the same result. And that is why those averages are perhaps more reliable. But in every single one, Reform has a lead. There is no disputing that Reform is ahead right now. And on average, 30-day aggregate is Reform 7 points over Labour. But the most narrow, focal data, I think, has Reform at just 4 points over Labour. So that's quite a big difference between the polling companies. So somebody's wrong. In fact, they all could be wrong. Maybe none of these are right, but this is what we are being given. This is what we're being told. And just for fun, let us take a look at what kind of parliament this might produce. We're a long time before a general election, but it's a bit of fun. As they always used to say on the BBC election night coverage for local elections, it's a bit of fun. Let's see what would happen in a general election. Reform on these figures, according to the Electoral Calculus website, which is where I got this from, Reform would be short of a majority by 8 seats. So Reform would have 318 seats, and Labour would be second in with 160, but losing 252, which is a massive set of losses. 252 losses is a huge amount. The Conservatives would lose even further than they've lost in 2024. They lost an awful lot of seats in 2024 and dropped down to 121 seats in total. Under these statistics, they're predicted 46 seats only. So this poll is predicting that the Conservatives are no longer one of the two main parties. The Liberal Democrats are only losing 4, they go down to 68. But being short of a majority means that the Reform Party would have some choices to make if there was a general election, and this was the result. Do they go it alone? Do they manage to get some kind of confidence and supply agreement? Do they do a coalition with the Conservatives, perhaps? I'm not sure who else would want to work with them. I'm not sure that the Conservatives would want to. But that is where we get to with the current state of the parties. Not where Keir Starmer would be wanting to see things go after just a year in power. Labour aren't losing like they used to. They're not dropping down in the polls anymore. Maybe they've reached as far as they will go down, but they will want to start to improve things and see Reform drop a little. I still, like I say, I think Reform is problematic because I think they're a one-man show. And I don't think that person necessarily actually wants power and responsibility. I think he just wants to shout off about things that he doesn't like. But we will see. Maybe he can prove me wrong. Maybe he's got something to offer after all. Okay, thank you very much. And I'll see you again in another video. And happy studying. Bye-bye.